Howdy folks, we're going to look at some of this R notation. Now we already did a little bit of selection out of a data frame here. There's a couple other cool advanced things that we'll get into and you want to know about. We're not necessarily going to use them all the time, but they're definitely handy tricks when you need them. So when we are selecting values, the blanks, right, give you everything. Those are, and then positive integers give you specific rows and columns. So we did those ones. You can repeat, which is kind of weird, but you can say, hey, I want row 1, and you get row 1 both times, right? And sure, you can do that. And if you give it two vectors, right, you'll get kind of a chunk out of it here. So if we go back to our example here with our sandwiches, if I wanted my menu and I wanted to get, let's say, 1 and 2, so I'll get rows 1 and 2, right? And then I want to get columns, let's do 2 and 3. Right? And then let's run this one here, and we should get now the sandwich here, right? This is column 2 and kids eating sandwich column 3 for rows 1 and 2. Right? That was our PB&J and our ham and cheese. So you can get two-dimensional values back out if you give it two-dimensional rows and column lists. That's all. So that's kind of neat here when you get into that. Other fun things, you can use negatives. So negatives say everything except those values. So if you want everything but row 1, you can say -1. I'll give you everything but row 1, which is kind of cool. Zero's not very useful at all, so don't use 0. Blanks give you everything. We looked at blanks before. And then logicals. Logicals are super cool, and we're going to see how this is super helpful in the next chapter here in a minute. But you can give it a vector of logicals, true or false here, and then it will, if there's a true there, will return that value. If it's false, it won't. So if we say, hey, I want row 1 and I want true, true, false, we'll get the first 2 columns, not the third column, because it was false here. So if I give it, I want rows as which rows I want, and I say true and everything else is false here, I get the first row and all the columns. So we can kind of give it this selective list of I want this row or this row or this row true here, false, 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 true, false, whatever combination we want here, and I can get those back out. So if I were going to imagine, so if I looked at my menu here, right, peanut butter and jelly does not have cheese, ham and cheese has cheese, grilled cheese has cheese. I guess the other ones don't have cheese, huh? Okay, so we can see which ones have cheese. So I would know row 2 has cheese and row 3 has cheese. So if I wanted, I could build out the, I don't know, cheese, sure, we'll make cheese days as a vector here. So I'll say cheese days is, so the first one is false, and then we said true and true, false, 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 false. Is that 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That seems like 7 here. So now I have my cheese days vector, and I see it's this logical, right, with 7 values here. And now I can get from my menu, if I want the days that have cheese, this will be my rows. So my rows will be the cheese days, and then the columns I want is all of them. And I want to know all the columns for days that we have cheese. So we get Tuesday ham and cheese, Wednesday grilled cheese, 4 kids eating grilled ham and cheese, 5 kids eating grilled cheese. That's real popular. I should throw that in 6. I don't count as one of the kids, but I love grilled cheese. So I definitely want to make sure we buy enough bread for that one. So this will come in super handy. We'll see next chapter as well, how you can kind of build these out automatically based on certain things to make sure we're selecting what we want to select. So that's really fun. So those are your logical values. You can also get things out by name, which is super cool. So I can say, hey, I want columns, face, suit, and value, or I just want, hey, one particular column. So if I know that, hey, I have my data was the day column, I can say, hey, I want menu, and I want, I don't know, rows 2 through 5, and then I want to get just the day column out. We'll say I just want the day column out. So I'll get rows 2 through 5, just the day column is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right? Day 2, 3, 4, and 5 of the week. So you can give it just the column or that column list if you want, right? So we can do just a single column or a list of columns, or sorry, a vector of columns here. So maybe day, and I want sandwich. There we go. So day and sandwich here. And we'll give that one a little run. And now I'll see, okay, here's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and the sandwich here. Right? So depending on what we give it, right, we can get different things back out. I should have been adding some more notes here. So this is, if it's true, return the row, right? And this is going to be get just the column named day, and this will be get multiple columns, multiple named columns. Now, you generally don't have named rows, right? because rows we just have values here, but because when we created this data frame, we gave these columns names, we're getting it here, right? So there we go. All right, so we can access this way. Now they go into some functions here. This is pretty cool. Don't sweat too much if this is new to you. We'll get into this as we go, but if you've coded before, dealing out functions here are pretty easy. Turns out, hey, just give me the first row. Right, I want all the columns, which is nice, but we're always going to get the same value every time. So now we need to figure out how we shuffle. Well, we've done sampling before. That was the trick here, and that's the secret. So we could sample from 1 to 52, 52 values, which will give you, a pretty unique looking order of 52 values every time, which is pretty fun. So if we just sample 52 a bunch of times here, which is really fun, we'll just shamelessly copy paste some code. Now, if I hit up, I get the same thing in my console here again. And notice I'm getting a different sequence each time. This is important. So I do get a different sequence each time I use the sample command as we go. So it's not like where you get the same sequence every single time when you use that sample. So that's pretty handy. All right, so we can shuffle those up. So we can turn that into a shuffle function here. Right, so you give it some cards, it will sample them, and then pick them in a random order here, which is really fun. So now we've got this shuffled here, so we can shuffle our deck. Now, shuffle is we're going to assign to deck 2, because we're going to shuffle up the first deck and assign it back here, right? Because this is giving us that value, so that's fun. The other way we can get at values is using the $ or double braces. So this gets a little bit funny here, but because our columns typically have names, I can give it the name of a column. So deck, or your variable name, $, your column name. So if I want to adjust my days here, so I could say I want a menu, $, and it even comes up with, hey, here's your values, because it knows what the names of my columns are. Here, so I can say menu $day will give me the day column here as a vector. Right? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Super cool. So you can get things out by name if you know what the names are. Right? And then you can just hand those right to particular values. Right? Get the mean, get the median. These built-in numbers are amazing here. So you can do that with lists too, just by using index notation. So my list here, right, is if we give names to the values, I can use these names. So we look at what's in there. So if we just look at our menu, I just say menu here, you should see, oh, this is the data frame, sorry. If you're doing the lists, you get out, you can see they're kind of sliced here by number, and you see all those $ attributes. And if you want to just get by index here, right, it shows, hey, this was the numbers value here. So kind of the list of lists. Now, what's weird about that, because it's a list with lists inside of it, right, once we start dealing with lists, you can't just pass it right away into something like sum, because you're getting the list back out, right? It's not the right type here that it wants to sum here. So using the $ notation gives you the values in it, not the list of it. So you can sum that immediately here. So it gets a little bit weird. The other thing you can do is you can use double braces. So if you don't want to use the $ notation, you can use double square braces to get out just that value, right? So it's a little weird. This explanation I found pretty helpful. If you think of it like a train, when you say, hey, I want the first value here, I want the first train car, right? The first list, sublist here, it'll give you that in a train. And you'll get the car attached to a new train here. So you get the whole thing. If you use the double braces, you just get the values back out. You don't get the whole train stuff around it here. So it takes a little while of playing with it and working with it. If you run into those errors that, hey, it's the invalid type list of argument here that you can't go do these things, think about it for a minute and see maybe we need to use the double braces, or maybe we can get them out by name here if we go. But like you saw, we could automatically go and sum up from the menu here using our data frame, because it's not the list of lists, right? Because our data frame knows, hey, this column is the type numeric here. Right? We already know what this is for us, which is super handy. All right, I'll see you in the next video, folks.